us for this Cognify Solutions Cognify Insight Network presentation. Today we'll be discussing AI in the public sector. So, Cognify Solutions is a company that is a brand of Nexus Systems Incorporated and is dedicated to ensuring that AI solutions are used well and in tandem with human agency and intentionality, and not as an abject replacement for it. The agenda today is to go through a presentation discussing how AI is currently used and recommended to be used in the public sector space. We'll be discussing the federal government as a model, but there are plenty of analogs and ways to adopt this for folks in the state or municipal space. If you have any questions or interest in that and how this could be adapted for your particular use case, I encourage you to reach out to us using the information below. So, why have we taken up this mantle? We at Cognify Solutions firmly believe that as beautiful, as wonderful as a playing field shifting technology that AI is, intentionality and governance is key. Indeed, if you have a brand new car and a brand new road, is it best to take that road in the dark going 80 miles per hour? Or is it best to go and bring a map, maybe obey some of the speed limits, maybe pick up a couple lessons of other folks along the way, and take that at maybe a headlights on at 55? I'm fairly certain one over the other will end up, make sure you don't end up in a ditch. All right, without further ado, let's jump to our main presentation.
All righty.
Reshare that in Zoom. Be nice if we got the Zoom toolbar to be sticky.
Indeed. Well, it's good that you start with from the federal perspective, because federal and AI governance is kind of an oxymoron these days. And I know you're going to go into the details as to why that is. But on a statewide level, you're seeing more and more states compensate for that by implementing their own AI governance or AI protocols. And it's really been a bipartisan thing. It's not just limited to certain political factions. You know, Texas has laws, New York has laws that are evolving in that space, because since this federal government decentralized a lot of those responsibilities and requirements, and the states, as you know, are making their own individual investments in building data centers and implementing their own services in parallel to what OpenAI is doing with the federal government and NVIDIA and all the other players that are dumping cash at them faster than they can spend it, which is a pretty interesting thing, because they can spend it.
Indeed.
They can spend it faster than Uber can. Has
Indeed.
Uber made a profit yet? That's amazing how these gig economy companies, can just exist and spend droves of VC money and not make a profit. It's mind-bending. Anyway.
Well, podcast discussion topics.
Indeed.
All right. So AI in the public sector, from policy to program value. Again, brought to you by Cognify Solutions. We're going to be discussing what agencies are doing now, how to do it safely, quickly, and at scale. A few points I will call out: some easy opportunities, which a number of these positions could serve as templates for folks in the state and municipal space. And again, we'd love to have a conversation with you to see how we can support your particular agency and environment. So one of the things that we'll be briefly touching on is where the policies that the current federal government, the current administration has implemented. It bears a mention that there was some unsteadiness in the AI posture that this current administration was going to take. There was a gap in some coverage, some recommendations. There was a repeal in February. However, an additional policy was implemented in April that gave some more higher level guidelines and some reasonable, a very lightweight, but somewhat reasonable framework. And that's what we'll be touching on. We're going to those that's some of the meat that we'll be trying to dig into. All right. And some other parts of that framework remain in effect. FedRAMP remains a way to acquire, as with all other procurement services, especially IT services, remains a preferred way to acquire that. M2522 also includes some recommendations in that way. Managing risk, still it remains under the purview of the NIST AI risk management framework. We may touch on ISO 42001. This isn't necessarily name checked by a current federal position, but if you're implementing a solution that happens to align with both, you're going to be in a much better position. So, a reality check for agencies in AI today. As we can see, AI use across the board is significantly going up and is projected to go up even further by reported numbers, and I would say by the end of this year and next year. Part of one of the recommendations in that revised AI guidance from the White House was to loosen how to acquire it and where to acquire it from a significantly. So AI usage is going to be going up across the board, and it is not our projection that it will be going back down. So here in this snapshot, over 1,700 agencies have already reported that they're using, there are already 1,700 reported use cases of AI in the federal government. And in the DOJ alone, they're reporting that they're using, they found over 240, 241 use cases in 2024.
Yeah. And I think when the dust is settled in 2025, you'll see perhaps even greater acceleration.
Indeed. So some illustrative use cases here. Excuse me. For the VA, the Department of Veteran Affairs, they've been using AI to automate medical imaging workflows, streamline processes, improve diagnostic capabilities. This is a core part of what they're doing. This core part of their operations, and dare I say, even enabling their core mission. A similar story at the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, where they're extracting outbreak data for public health surveillance and then using that to enable rapid response in potential health crises as they
Right.
see that.
Although they advise against vaccinations, which is another podcast topic.
The health crises as they see them, indeed.
Yeah. Let's remember
So
science, folks.
here. So we can even just look at some of these numbers where 42% of the agencies that are reporting federal use cases, excuse me, of the use cases reported by federal agencies are all related to mission enablement. Now, these aren't simple bolt-on, let's try to use this to kind of touch up some documents. They're using these in ways that really are helping them at the core of their mission. All right. Additional services include, or use cases include operations, services, interacting with the citizenry, touching up some documents, or maybe generating some documents or helping out with case and interaction support, and research. In addition to a reasonable chunk of other.
Yeah, I wonder if the IRS falls into the other category.
Hmm,
But
quite possible.
the IRS is not a government agency, so I've answered my question.
Well, moving along. M2521 replaces M2410 and what changed? So it was a priority shift in some of those key applications. Okay. M2521, the one that dropped on April 3rd of 25, this emphasized innovation, governance, and public trust, directing agencies to remove barriers to AI adoption and empower AI leaders. So there's in that particular mandate, there's a greater emphasis on a lighter structure in managing these and making it more clear of where these are supposed to be gathered from and to tap on the private sector with intentionality to bring these on board. M2521 significantly de-emphasizes, actually, I would say it doesn't speak on that at all, any type of internally developed AI, or to overly focus on internal research. It definitely pluses up the the relationship with the private sector to pull them into the federal government's journey in this AI implementation scheme. As such, streamlined approach. The new memorandum sets governance, inventory, and high impact AI risk practices with clear implementation guidance and timelines. That is one of the things that is actually an interesting takeaway from this, that we would say if you are if you are listening to this in the federal space, hey, you have that mandate right there. You have that White House memo right there. If you are not, this is actually something to actually consider if you have at least some basic policies in your particular environment, and whether or not the state or municipal level. If you've started to consider AI use, if you start to actually use this, if any of this is considered high impact, because considering where you are and the amount of impact, financial, property, personal, health, that you have, it may fall into this, and it's important to make sure you have some type of a real clear practices in place around usage of those high impact AI deployments. Further, one of the other key focuses of this of 2521 was also aligned with a earlier executive order. Believe that's the one that dropped in February, on ensuring that partnership with the private sector was enhanced. So that removing barriers to American leadership in artificial intelligence does remove some barriers, as they believe them to be, to help advance the U.S. Global AI dominance. Um, we support any attempt to put reasonable guidance and governance and guardrails in place. It is going to be our continual position that more may not always be better, but neither is less. So some immediate governance expectations just on how you're managing some of these potential AI use cases and deployments is going to recommend that you have these controls in place, these personnel in place. So if you do not yet have a chief AI officer, excuse me, then you strongly should. M2521 dropped in on the beginning of April. So by the time of this taping, if this applied to you, in order to be in compliance, you would have surely have already started to consider designating your chief AI officer. If you're reviewing this presentation, I would encourage you to start revisiting some of these deadlines in this time frame. Indeed, how has the experience of your chief AI officer been? Have they been able to really reach some of the goals and allocate the resources that they've wanted to do? What is it? What changes may be necessary to really start kind of operationalize and revisit some of the visions that they may have set, that your organization writ large may have set for your particular AI use cases?
Question, Chris.
Yes,
These require these expectations for M2521 only apply to government agencies, correct?
correct.
There's
At the federal level.
at the federal level.
Yeah.
There is no federal mandate or set of statutes that apply to the private industry, correct?
As of was this October 1st, as of about 1 p.m. Eastern, October 1st, 2025, no, not to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah,
However, depending on whenever you're reviewing this, I encourage you to consult with the Federal Register or Council to be sure.
right. But it but because this doesn't govern private industry
Yeah,
AI governance, that doesn't mean you're off the hook. In fact, it likely means you need to double down and incorporate AI governance with whatever you're doing in AI,
bingo.
because uh, no one else is going to do it for you.
Yeah,
And the ramifications of not having an AI governance program in place,
yeah,
we've seen in certain industries like legal and others where hallucinations and the like have
yeah,
unfortunately creeped into the business day-to-day business, it can be catastrophic. So,
It most certainly can. To that end, and if we were to actually take this and liken this to the private sector, one of the things that I would strongly recommend, that we would strongly recommend, is to look into some type of peer council. Now, in the federal government, this is calling for a CAIO council of other CIO personnel among different agencies and interagency council. If you are at the state level, you may be able to do this across different departments, different agencies in your particular state. If you're doing this at the municipal level, you may be the one CAIO for your particular municipality. If you have lower deputy AI directors for different city departments, different municipal departments, that's a good call to action to ensure that you guys are using each other's peers and having a conversation rather than just top down. And even still, if you are the municipal level and you don't have any, say, deputy AI directors, maybe your footprint or current position with AI is not that large, consider if there are any peers in your among other local municipalities or among other municipalities of your particular size, and see if there's a way for you to be able to network with them. One of the things we do is we have a community of folks who are designing, deploying, interested in, and part of this AI process. If you need any help establishing or want to be part of that community, I'd encourage you to reach out and explore the Cognify Insight Network as well.
right. And one other point to follow up on when we talked about this kind of separation between the private sector and the government sector. If you're a government contractor, you need to follow these protocols um,
Indeed.
in parallel in order to satisfy them. And what I'm kind of hearing is that pretty soon there will be a cottage industry of fractional chief AI officers that are going to infiltrate the market space and
Yeah,
perhaps fill some of these gaps. We're all aware of all the federal budget cuts and downsizing of certain agencies. So it's hard to imagine that the funds will be there to fill the the positions that you've identified here.
indeed.
Um, other than, as you mentioned, find somebody who knows something who may have that title and somehow get access to them, even on the smallest of fractional levels
Indeed.
to take advantage of their wherewithal.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic call out. So speaking to potential contractors, vendors right here, absolutely do what you can to try to mirror this. And consider if you are currently if you are currently participating in a federal contract where there's any discussion of bringing AI into this, be proactive and start mentioning that you have you're developing chief AI, CAIO facilities. Maybe you have that inside your organization, maybe you don't, but maybe you have at least designated leads focused on solely on this. That's a large portion of this type of governance recommendation, and is part of some of our core recommendations, is ensuring that some of the responsibility for this may be shared with some intentionality, but the responsibility of this also does land on one desk so that their single person may help champion and coordinate your AI efforts. And of course, one of the a third coming back, looking at the third governance expectation here is ensuring that these use cases are properly inventoried so that shadow AI isn't a thing that will just happen. All right. One of the more interesting parts, high impact AI, minimum practices for that. What is high impact AI? First, um, the definition of high impact AI. First, AI with an output that serves as a principal basis for decisions or actions with legal, material, binding, or significant effect on an individual or entity's civil rights, civil liberties, or privacy, or an individual or entity's access to education, housing, insurance, credit, employment, and other similar programs. If you have an AI implementation that is meeting any of these, then it's considered under this memorandum under 2521 high impact AI. And it does set out a specific set of practices for this, which are actually somewhat reasonable and well aligned. There's many places you can go to take this deeper, and we highly recommend that. But if you do not yet have a any guidance in place for any AIs that could potentially even touch high impact scenarios, then we strongly recommend following this. So, pre-deployment testing, step one. Ensure that as you're designing, developing, and beginning to deploy this, that you have rigorous validation of performance metrics, that you're doing rigorous investigation of potential safety concerns, and you're being particularly rigorous about compliance issues. And again, looking at the NIST risk management framework, AI risk management framework, which is already promulgated through a federal agency, that's probably going to be your guiding star there. Depending on where you are, again, a recommendation we have is also look at 42001 and others of 42000 series from ISO, because that may also help fill in some gaps. Well, that the NST IA risk management framework may be a little bit more holistic. 42001 will be a little bit more prescriptive. Pair those together, and you will have established an excellent foundation. Indeed, as part of some of the recommendations of those frameworks, and most any reasonable framework is going to be implementing and documenting an AI impact assessment to sit down and evaluate potential risk and societal implications, and ensure that as you're going through this, you talk to potential the citizenry, you talk to your constituency that might be affected by this. All right, and incorporate real potential questions, real potential risks, real potential implications. As ultimately, what's the point of an AI impact assessment if the only impact you've measured would never really be felt by the constituency of which you serve? And
Good point.
as good,
Yeah, good point. And again, just these are federal standards, but if you look at, as you explained, high impact AI, it could be, life changing. It could be someone's civil liberties, rights. You know, these are very, very serious matters. So in the private sector, you really should be paying attention to these same minimum practices. And most of the reports of breaches in the private industry seem to indicate that there really isn't an either an awareness or a desire to really strictly and enforce a lot of practices, best practices to ensure the discipline necessary to protect high impact AI from causing issues
Mhm.
in the business or to harm to individuals. We've seen cases again of hallucination in legal and other areas
Indeed,
where people have been harmed. And this, yeah, this is one of the more impactful slides in the presentation because
here, here.
AI can cause damage if not properly monitored. And
Indeed. So one of the jumping on that, because 110%, absolutely. If you I suppose I can't quite beat that drum enough as part of our what we believe is a moral obligation to really ratchet to dig in and see what these real impacts are and be intentional about that. If you are in the private sector, seriously consider this. One of the things that the case studies that we've mentioned before is that of a mortgage company that had implemented a AI powered system, and come to find out because of how it was implemented that it was trained on old data going back to the 60s, the 50s, further back, and had started to make recommendations aligned with the values of society at that time, and started to disenfranchise certain clientele. That would have been something that by definition, would have been a high impact AI that should have absolutely gone through this process at minimum, but it had not. And this was only really discovered after this had been making these mortgage calls and an investigation from the ACLU happened. So good governance keeps you from getting there in the first place. So independent review, objective evaluation by qualified third parties, and ultimately, especially if this is can potentially affect your life, your liberty of your constituency, termination capability must absolutely be part of this. The old excuse, either I don't know, a computer did it, or I can't stop it, the computer's doing it, that's not acceptable. You must have the ability to discontinue non-compliant AI systems, and this must be a capability that can be exercised in a timely manner. So ensure that all of these things are part of your evaluation of your of high impact AI systems. But I might be so bold, I think a recommendation we have might be go so far as to consider, even if your AI is not high impact as this is defined, consider how these steps may still be represented as you evaluate other medium or even low impact AI systems you're implementing. Right? Some acquisition guardrails in brief. As you start to look to acquire some AI systems, consider cross-functional teams in the acquisition process. Consider linking up your acquisition team, your procurement, IT, legal, privacy, program experts to help decide and deliberate on different ways this AI that you bring in may touch on these concerns. All right, ensure that there are other stakeholders in that conversation. For IP and data contract terms, ensure that there's clear delineation of ownership rights and data usage restrictions. At the federal level, this is a little bit more clear as much federal work product, especially if it's published, to be put retain federal copyright, be still be must generally be publicly available, depending on your data privacy and data classification guidelines. But
This,
ensure that there's an understanding of that before you bring a vendor in and that you're able to have that conversation with that vendor. Because if that vendor is moving that data around inside their model, or heaven forbid, actually doing some training on this, and that's going back to them, that's something you absolutely need to be aware of. Or even perhaps a more likely scenario, especially for vendors that are offering models, maybe they're offering you a more private or limited deployment of that. Is this model still training itself? Could the model that you're using for one particular mission leak information to another part of the agency that's not supposed to share that particular set of the details? Ensure you're understanding what the data flows in and out of that model are.
and I think too, this brings up an interesting uh, question or sidelight. If I put my procurement hat on, um, I happen to be a procurement professional in a prior life and have done some work in that space in the public sector, for state agencies and the like. And to me, this sounds like there definitely needs to be some training and some guardrails for people in procurement services, because in the public sector, any kind of a procurement is typically centralized through a procurement services department.
Yeah.
But traditionally, they have subject matter experts either within the department or they have access to, there's usually an IT procurement manager per se that's within that group that has a dotted line access to people at a higher level in information technology. So that same kind of infrastructure, and you mentioned earlier, the chief AI officer or something along those
Yeah.
lines. You
CIO.
know, my concern and question is, you know, is that piece of this puzzle really being incorporated in M25, 22? Are there indeed specific guardrails and guidelines for centralized procurement departments that basically oversee every conceivable procurement in a government agency. Having been exposed to agencies like the Department of Health in New York, even NYCHA. And you can imagine they have an abundance of contractors and contracts of any kind. Um, so that's something out of curiosity that just kind of hit my mind.
That's an excellent point. And one of the things, considering this adds significantly more technical concerns to the procurement process, many agencies may already have certain guidelines to loop in certain IT personnel, certain subject matter experts in that procurement process. But this is a little bit of a horse of a different color. I would definitely say that, especially considering the assumptions and the variation, the moving target that a lot of AI technologies are these days, that upskilling your procurement team is absolutely a brilliant idea. I
Yeah.
think you hit the nail on the head right there, Richard. And again, we would encourage you that as you start to implement this in either your particular agency or you're looking at this in other venues, that if you have questions about, well, all right, how do we upskill our procurement team? We'd love to have a conversation with you. All right.
Yeah. And again, there might be a cottage industry of consultants that can help the public sector to write and implement these guidelines.
Indeed.
And that certainly might be something that Cognify would be interested in partnering with um, the public sector on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, for more information at any time, please feel free to check the wherever this video is distributed. And if you happen to be live, some of these information will be in the chat um, for information on how to contact us and to get further details. We are a registered federal agency provider as well. So if you need those details or capability statements, please reach out. So evaluate before the award, monitor after award. It's important to remember that the AI deployments, the AI systems that you may be acquiring are not meant to be static. They are not to be implemented, installed, and forgotten about. So as you as you evaluate before the award, test these systems for performance, accuracy, and compliance. Assess potential risks, including bias, privacy concerns, or security vulnerabilities. Review these contract terms for IP rights, data ownership, vendor lock-in protections. And after you all issue the award, fantastic. You've gotten a solution. The vendor has assisted you in your mission. Great. What now? Ensure that you're implementing quarterly or biannual monitoring of these systems, checking for its performance and effectiveness. AI systems, especially if there's any opportunity for it to train itself, this is a moving target you need to actively monitor. And indeed, just make sure that it remains valid for your particular agency's use case and mission. Missions shift, use cases shift. The needs of your constituencies may ebb and flow over time. And ensure that you're able to act proactively. Conduct regular cost justification reviews to ensure continued value for taxpayers. Indeed. And include clear sunsetting criteria in contracts for terminating AI systems that fail to meet standards. So if you're doing these evaluations and you find that the AI system is not quite meeting that goal, ensure that there is a positive feedback loop on what to do with that and how to sunset, hopefully to replace, but perhaps to terminate that system if need be. All right. Touching on some cloud security pathways, the FedRAMP 20X initiative launched in March 2025 to accelerate authorization timelines from years to weeks through automated assessment and continuous security monitoring. FedRAMP guidelines for this remain not just in effect, but reasonably well prioritized here. AI prioritization in this examination. And there's now a discussion of a dedicated fast track for AI-based cloud services, particularly those offering conversational AI engines for routine tasks and mission-critical AI workloads. So expect some additional support on those areas and benefits. So this particular pathway enables agencies to rapidly deploy secure AI solutions while maintaining compliance with federal security standards and M2521 requirements. Again, this is going to be more applicable in the federal procurement space. But if you are in the state or municipal space, considering what other procurement pathways that your particular environment has allowed you to have, and see whether or not there are ways to um, kind of see if there are any ways to help accelerate deployments like this. If not, that's understandable. The federal government is making some unique moves, some perhaps less on the municipal level, less for some larger municipalities, particularly at the state level. However, for some states, this may be a conversation you can have in your environment. All right. Touching on NIST AI risk management framework. The AI RMF 1.0 from NIST provides a comprehensive approach for managing risk associated with these AI systems. Generally speaking, this should be one of the your foundational governance frameworks for your management of these systems. I touched on this earlier. It generally covers four things: governing these systems, mapping the contexts and risks of these systems, measuring those and benchmarking those risks and their impacts, and managing these risks, ensuring that you're able to respond and communicate and prioritize certain risks that you're collecting as part of this framework. It's important to understand that this is a loop. No spot on this is really to be taken any significantly larger priority than another. In order to govern well, you're going to have to manage well. In order to measure well, you have to ensure that your risks and contexts are properly mapped. And this has to be a continual, ongoing process.
Yes, yeah.
Security by design for AI. There is some CISA and NSA joint guidance out there that are attempting to document and provide some comprehensive best practices. Um, to date, to our knowledge, there are not coherent, complete documents well issued, but we're looking for them to be for them to drop for the private industry or at least other public sector partners to be published for everyone's use. All right. AI data security in 2025, released in May 2025. This guidance highlights the critical role of data security in ensuring the accuracy, integrity, and trustworthiness of AI outcomes. Again, if you've had, and if you're in the federal position, there is certainly information security guidance and governance that is going to apply. Ensure that this is reviewed, because as you start looking to implement some of these AI systems, it's going to be an excellent time to review your current security posture. All right. Security across the AI lifecycle. Again, the NSA's Artificial Intelligence Security Center provides best practices to secure and protect data used in AI-based systems throughout their lifecycle. Again, if you are the federal position, excuse me, if you're in the federal environment, these are going to be resources that you're going to be able to take advantage of directly. If you're not currently in the federal government environment, but in the state or municipal, you can't quite just call up the NSA. Well, I suppose you could. Your mileage may vary on how well they take that call. But consider implementing other security action teams in your environment. Almost certainly, again, if you're at the state level and perhaps even at the municipal level, you've had security personnel to partner up with to engage in certain guidance. It's important to make sure that these same folks are going to be part of this conversation. All right. And again, a similar governance workflow for security by design. As your design, ensure that security is part of your process in the design and development. Ensure that security is part of your process as you start to determine data collection and processing processes. Ensure security is part of the conversation when you're doing the training and validation of the models you're implementing, and ensure security is part of the process when you're deploying and monitoring these systems. And this is a loop, because this is the AI systems that you're deploying ideally should not be static boxes. Indeed, they're not really designed to be that. There's a certain non-determinism to them that needs to be well managed. Again, part of our recommendations, I'll just touch on this briefly, that with ISO 42001 gives a great many recommendations to help cover some of the prescriptive um, areas that the NIST risk management framework leaves more holistic. So if you do not have all of that filled, all of that complete, the ISO 42001 really helps to fill in those gaps there. So it is an international standard. It is published by the International Standards Organization. Um, so your ability to implement that in the federal circles, you may want to consider the appropriateness. If it is, please do. If not, that's understandable. All right. So this is a lot of information. What do you do? What do you do in day zero? Well, consider the personnel you have in place to help drive this. If you are under the sound of my voice and not the CAIO or part of the AI governance board, then good on you for spearheading this. Hopefully, you're still in the leadership of your particular department or agency, and you can help get some of this moving. If not, forward this link along to who needs to hear it. But to start establishing those personnel, start establishing some of those leadership roles, get those people in a room and start having real conversation about strategy and guidelines and next steps. All right. To also put a acceptable use policy out there. We do have some samples you can use there that we can then tailor for your particular use case. Please feel free to reach out and let's talk about that and ensure that you have a inventory of AI systems that are in use. Again, you want to make sure that shadow AI doesn't start to become a thing. That's not necessarily to say to ban it all, although consider your particular agency security posture. That might be a possibility. But if your particular employees and your staff are finding, ChatGPT this, Gemini that, Manus this, then understand that. Use that as a place to start putting together your AI strategy and being able to look at some of these applications and see how they can be implemented, maybe re-implemented internally, maybe just certain agreements executed with those particular vendors to ensure that your AI systems remain under compliance, remain under control, remain transparent. All right. After that first 30 days, day 31 to 90, start executing some of that. As you start to have these conversations, as you start to establish some of these policies, start walking them out. Start seeing, especially if you're in the procurement process, or excuse me, especially if you haven't begun the procurement process, you're going to want to have a lot of this in place. If you're already in the procurement process, see how this can map to your existing RFPs and your existing questions to the vendor. If you've already acquired it, then still see how you can then adjust your internal policy to help cover any gaps that the vendor wasn't able to provide initially. Hopefully, the vendor, as part of that procurement process, you've established an ongoing relationship with the vendor. And then as you're implementing some of these guidance and policies internally, you can start getting guidance from the vendor on how this may impact, hopefully positively, the AI system that you've acquired.
And bear in mind too that very likely your existing vendor population may be turning more and more to AI in use. So this might not be a question of vetting new vendors. This can be more of a question of vetting existing vendors, already approved vendors that perhaps you use directly through contracts, existing contracts to procure goods. But if they are now implementing AI components within their existing or legacy products, you need to understand that. And you need to have a process in place that continuously reviews your vendor population, specifically with a lens on if they're infusing AI in their work to provide the services to you, to understand what that means. So this is not just about new procurements. It's also something that you want to make backwards compatible to existing vendors who may be dipping their toes in AI to ensure that your you're protected.
Indeed. Indeed. 110% on that point. And I think that's probably a good mic drop moment right there. So as we close this out, consider those conversations with your vendors. Consider those relationship with your vendors. And look at what good looks like to ensure the benefits that you're expecting to get from these systems are measurable, that the evaluations of your AI systems are reproducible. Make sure you have a methodology on how you test this, even if it's as simple as these are how we're prompting it. This is a collection of results. This is how we're scoring those results. Let's just run through those prompts on a quarterly basis to make sure we know where that is. Document the controls that apply to you and your systems that are unique to your agency's environment, and ensure that there's next step criteria in those contracts. AI remains a new and somewhat volatile thing. Ensure that replacement or sunsetting of these AI systems is something that is easily accessible. So with that, again, we thank you for your time. We thank you for everybody who's attended to this presentation in person. We thank you for your time, for everybody who's attended this recording. If you're catching the replay, please feel free to engage with us on the particular platform that this is. There should be information below on how to reach out to us if you have any questions at all. And please, if you wish to continue to be part of this conversation, consider joining our community. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity to ensure that you have the tools to help drive transparency, mitigate bias, and earn and keep the public trust. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Nice job.
Oh, that's a wrap. That's a wrap.
That's right. I know you got to run, so let's keep our exits brief. I will see you later and work on this in the interim. All right.
Indeed. Richard, thank you.
Good luck.
That was
Bye.
good. Always appreciated not sparring, I don't know, conversation partner.
Always a pleasure.
Indeed. All right, see you, man.
All right. Talk to you later. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye. We're on for 5. Is that it with Will? Or 5?
Yes. Is there a meeting link? I
I
don't
don't
know.
think there is.
Okay, I may have just mentioned that, put it in my calendar. I'll put it on the calendar
I can
momentarily.
send it out. I can send it
Oh,
out.
I appreciate it. Thank
4
you,
to
man.
5, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
All right.
See you later.
Fantastic.
Good
All
luck
right,
with Alan.